Have you ever wondered what truly brought the mighty Roman Empire to its knees? It wasn't a larger army. It wasn't superior technology. It was barbarians, wild-haired warriors from the frozen forests of the north. Uncivilized, untamed, unyielding. They were the Goths, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Alaric, Theodoric. Names once feared across the empire, now forgotten on modern maps. In this cinematic series, we explore the rise of the Gothic civilization, a force that broke Rome, built kingdoms in its ashes, and shaped the very soul of medieval Europe. In this first chapter, you'll witness the mysterious origins of the Goths from the northern edges of the world, their great migration through rivers, mountains, and blood-soaked battlefields, and the unforgettable fall of Rome in 410 AD, the Eternal City, shattered by a people it once called savages. This is not just history. This is the tragedy of power, the tale of survival, and the legacy of a proud people who refused to bow. Subscribe now to follow the full saga. Epic battles between Goths and Rome, the Visigothic kingdom in Spain, the Ostrogothic Empire in Italy. And the final question, were the Goths destroyers? Or the rebirth of a world after Rome? Put on your headphones, close your eyes. Because history isn't just to be remembered, it's meant to be felt. Chapter 1. The Terror Without Walls. They came not to build, but to break. In the dying twilight of the Roman Empire, when marble roads still gleamed under the fading sun of civilization, the earth trembled, not from the march of disciplined legions, but from the unrelenting flood of something far older, far wilder. Hordes of warriors surged over the Rhine, clad not in iron uniforms, but in animal pelts, with wild eyes and a language the Romans didn't speak, but soon learned to fear. The Goths had arrived. No siege towers, no castles, no walls. Only momentum, flesh and fire. The strength of numbers, not of stone. In Age of Empires, too, few civilizations scream chaos like the Goths. Where others build mighty castles to anchor their strategy, the Goths laugh at the idea of walls. Instead, they flood the map with endless waves of infantry, cheap, fast, and terrifying in number. Their Huskarl, a unique unit bred to tear through archers like paper, epitomizes this primal tide. And all of it? Achievable without a single castle. Their barracks becomes a factory of death, churning out bodies faster than most players can react. It's not about quality. It's about the overwhelming truth of quantity. In the late game, a skilled Goth player doesn't need elegance. They need dirt, iron, and relentless production. 1,000 legs pounding the earth, 100 torches setting the horizon ablaze. This is not civilization. This is the undoing of it. History echoes the game. But Age of Empires, too, didn't invent this chaos. It simply echoed a truth that once brought an empire to its knees. In the 4th and 5th centuries, the Roman Empire had stretched itself thin. Too many roads, too many enemies, too few sons willing to bleed for the eagle. And on its borders, a rising storm. The Goths, both Visigoths and Ostrogoths, had been watching, waiting, pushed westward by the ever-looming pressure of the Huns behind them. When the dam broke, it wasn't a war, it was a flood. They didn't conquer like Rome. They didn't build. They burned. In 378 AD, at the Battle of Adrianople, the Roman dream cracked. Emperor Valens, overconfident and dismissive, underestimated the Gothic horde. His legions, armored, trained, proud, were surrounded and annihilated. Valens himself disappeared in the carnage. His body never recovered. It was one of Rome's worst defeats, and it wasn't delivered by a rival empire, but by tribes who fought with desperation, not discipline. In both gameplay and history, the genius of the Goths lies in their rejection of traditional defense. Where civilizations like the Byzantines or Koreans hide behind stone fortresses, the Goths embrace exposure. Vulnerability becomes their fuel. You strike their base? Good. Now their infantry is cheaper. You kill their villagers? Fine. Their population cap is exploding anyway. You build towers and castles? Their Huskarl doesn't care. And in history, the same paradox held. Roman cities, built to last centuries, found themselves powerless. Because the Goths weren't coming to hold, they were coming to take. And once taken, to move on. The empire was built on roads, and the Goths turned those roads into runways of destruction. The contrast couldn't be starker. Picture it in-game. Franks, with their majestic castles and armored cavalry, standing tall and proud. Teutons, securing every inch of territory with thick walls and stubborn knights. Goths, no castles. Just barracks upon barracks, spewing waves of Huskarl and champions like a bleeding artery. Now imagine the history behind it. Rome, a civilization of aqueducts, law, and architecture, facing an enemy it never understood. The Goths didn't want assimilation. They didn't want negotiation. They wanted freedom or vengeance. Sometimes both. And when Alaric, the Visigoth king, stood outside the gates of Rome in 410 AD, the Eternal City trembled. For centuries, Rome had believed its walls made it invincible. But Alaric knew better. He didn't need catapults. He needed time and treachery. When the gates finally opened, it wasn't to let in an army. It was to let out a truth. No empire is eternal. The brilliance of Age of Empires, too, is not just in mechanics, but in metaphor. The way Goths function in game, no castles, endless infantry, sheer pressure, isn't just good design. It's historical storytelling. Their early game weakness reflects the fragmented beginnings of Gothic tribes. Their late game explosion mirrors the downfall of Rome. Their disdain for walls echoes their real-world strategy. Overwhelm, don't outlast. Even the barracks, becoming the heart of the civilization, mimics how the Goths relied not on engineers, but on sheer manpower. They didn't siege, they swarmed. The terror wasn't in the weapon, but in the will. Rome had better weapons. Rome had better tactics. Rome had walls, but the Goths had nothing to lose. And in warfare, ancient or digital, that's often the most terrifying weapon of all. A foreshadowing of fire. As Rome fell into shadows, other tribes watched. The Vandals, the Lombards, the Saxons. And further east, the Huns. If the Goths were a flood, the Huns would be lightning, fast, brutal, and blinding. So what happens when the only thing scarier than a wave is what rides on top of it? Coming up in Chapter 2, the legacy of Alaric, fall of Rome. We've seen the power of numbers. Now, prepare for the power of speed. In the next chapter, we ride with Attila, where hooves strike harder than swords, and mercy is a forgotten word. Chapter 2, the legacy of Alaric, fall of Rome. No one thought it would happen. For nearly 800 years, Rome stood as the untouchable heart of civilization, an empire so vast, so powerful, it seemed immortal. Its golden eagles flew from the windswept moors of Britannia to the sands of Egypt. Its legions had crushed countless enemies. Its cities were wrapped in stone walls, guarded by centuries of conquest. And yet, in the year 410, Rome fell. Not to a rival empire, not to rebellion from within, but to a man the Romans once dismissed as a barbarian. Alaric, king of the Goths. He didn't march with elephants like Hannibal, nor did he cross oceans with armadas like the Carthaginians. Alaric brought with him something far more terrifying to the Romans: the rage of the forgotten. Years earlier, Alaric had served in the Roman army. He'd seen the hypocrisy, the corruption, the empty promises made to his people, the Visigoths, who had been promised land, food, and peace in exchange for blood spilled in Roman wars. But promises are cheap in a dying empire. When Rome betrayed him, Alaric didn't forget. He watched, he waited, and then he returned, not as a servant, but as a storm. For 3 days in August 410, the gates of Rome swung open, not by battering rams, but by betrayal from within. And what followed was not just a sack, it was a symbolic execution. No emperor had ever watched Rome fall to outsiders. Alaric made history, but he didn't burn the city. He didn't need to. Its soul was already burning from the inside. What made Alaric different wasn't just his sword, it was his vision. Unlike many other tribal warlords, Alaric didn't want to destroy the empire. He wanted to inherit it. He saw the chaos Rome had become, nobles clinging to power, emperors rising and falling like autumn leaves, the once mighty legions now hollowed by politics and greed. To the Romans, Alaric was a barbarian. To the Goths, he was a liberator. To history, he was the beginning of the end. The sack of Rome wasn't just a military victory. It was a torch passed. From empire to tribe, from marble to iron, from law to legend. In Age of Empires 2, the Goths don't build castles. They don't rely on thick walls or slow-moving siege. Instead, they flood the battlefield with cheap, fast infantry, overwhelming opponents through sheer force of will. That's not just game design, it's a reflection of their legacy. Like Alaric at Rome, you don't need fortifications. You don't need elegance. You need timing, fury, numbers. You need to break the gates before they know what hit them. Playing the Goths means embracing the chaos, just as Alaric did. It's guerrilla warfare in a world built for kings. And that's the point. The Goths never wanted to play by Rome's rules. They wrote their own. Rome didn't collapse in a single night. But its soul cracked when Alaric's men walked its streets. Senators fled, citizens despaired. The illusion of eternal empire vanished. But Rome wasn't dead, yet. Other emperors would rise, other tribes would come. The Huns, the Vandals, the Ostrogoths. Still, it was Alaric who opened the door. In AoE 2, the Goths never stop pushing. They don't give the enemy room to breathe. That mirrors what Alaric started, a relentless march against fading glory. Alaric didn't live to see his dream fulfilled. Just months after sacking Rome, he died unexpectedly in southern Italy. His warriors buried him in a riverbed, rerouting the stream to hide his grave, then killed the slaves who performed the task, ensuring his resting place would never be found. He came from the shadows. He left in silence. But his legacy roared for centuries. Alaric was more than a conqueror. He was a mirror, held up to an empire rotting from within. Where Rome offered gold and law, the Goths offered something primal, survival. And in the game, as on the battlefield, it's not always the most advanced who wins. Sometimes, it's the most determined. In Age of Empires 2, you don't play the Goths to build wonders. You play them to crush them. Alaric's falls opened the gates, but it was only the beginning. In the next chapter, we journey beyond the borders of Rome, to the crucible of chaos where the Gothic legacy would collide with another unstoppable force. Attila, the scourge of God, and a brutal alliance that would rewrite the future of Europe. Stay with us. And remember, the barbarians were never just outside the walls. Sometimes they were already inside. If this story gripped you, subscribe for more historical journeys through the game you love. Age of Empires 2. From sieges to strategies, from forgotten kings to famous empires, we bring the battlefield to life. Chapter 3. The Flood of Infantry. When quantity drowns out quality. No one survives the flood. Not when it comes wave after wave, tearing down your walls, choking your defenses, overwhelming your strategy. Not with brilliance, but with brute force. And if you've ever faced the Goths in Age of Empires 2, you know this truth. You don't fight the Goths, you survive them. There's a moment, usually in Imperial Age, when you realize the game is no longer about tactics or precision. You hear it first, the thunder of marching boots. Then you see it, a flood of Huskarl infantry, black-clad, fast and deadly, storming the map like a virus infecting everything. Walls mean nothing. Towers fall, archers are shredded. And just like that, your carefully laid strategy begins to unravel. Welcome to the Goths' late game, where infantry isn't a unit, it's a swarm. Infantry over everything. In most civilizations, infantry is the starting point, the humble foot soldier. For the Goths, it's the end game. With every age you advance, the cost of infantry gets cheaper. Feudal age, 35% discount. Castle, 40%. Imperial, 50%. No other civilization in the game bends the economy this hard. This isn't just strategy, it's a declaration. We don't need castles, we don't need elegance, we need bodies. And with an economy geared toward raw numbers and a tech tree built around flooding the battlefield with free units, the Goths become the embodiment of chaos. The more you kill, the more that come. Like hydras, except every head is holding an axe. Then comes their secret weapon, the Huskarl, a unit so fast, so resistant to arrows, that even the best archer civs, Britons, Mayans, Byzantines, panic when the black tide comes. Huskarls ignore what archers were built to do. Armor? Check. Speed? Check. Anti-archer? Oh yes. Suddenly, those beautiful longbow lines you built for 30 minutes? Useless. They fall in seconds. It's not just overpowering, it's humiliating. Vasa, but where's the elegance? And that's the twist. While other civilizations are about finesse, outsmarting, outmaneuvering, out-teching, Goths are about drowning you in sheer numbers. The Byzantines outlast you with walls and healing. The Britons snipe you from a screen away. The Aztecs swarm with monks and eagles. But Goths? They just throw bodies at you until you run out of arrows. And while that may sound brainless, it's anything but. Because behind that wall of death is a ruthless economy, a race against time, and a pressure cooker of micro-decisions. You must balance villagers, production, upgrades, and raids with surgical speed, because one mistake and your swarm dies. The simplicity is deceptive. The brutality is real. But where does this idea of more men over better men come from? Historically, the Gothic tribes were never the most advanced, nor the most organized. But they had something more dangerous: adaptability and momentum. They didn't build empires with towering cities or marble roads. They moved, and when they moved, they came in masses. From the forests of Eastern Europe to the gates of Rome, their strength was never in shiny armor. It was in numbers, unpredictability, and their refusal to die quietly. And as the Roman Empire started to fracture, the Goths learned fast. They studied Rome's weaknesses, turned its roads against it, and used the collapsing infrastructure to spread like wildfire. They didn't conquer like emperors. They occupied like survivors. And that's the core of their gameplay too. You don't win pretty, you win ugly, relentlessly, desperately, and with more bodies than your enemy has arrows. But there's a catch, a dark one. The Goths, while monstrous in the late game, were also racing against time. No castles, no elite techs, no late-game siege, no strong navy. You can't let the game drag on or face civs like Celts, Portuguese, or Koreans that can tech up and lock you out with superior firepower. You either crush your enemy with a tsunami of steel before they stabilize, or you collapse, tired, out-teched, and obsolete. In the end, the Goth strategy is a gamble, a race, a scream of war that echoes through the ages. And here's the thing. The Goths might not have outlived Rome in glory or architecture, but in spirit, they never died. Their legacy is found in asymmetric warfare, in every desperate army that throws waves of conscripts at an empire, in every insurgency that fights not with superiority, but with numbers, mobility, and raw hunger. And in Age of Empires too, that legacy lives on, in every desperate, glorious, infantry-flooded battle. But if you think the infantry spam is the most terrifying part of the Goths, you haven't seen how they twist victory into chaos on the sea. Chapter 4. No castle, no siege engineers. So what? What if your civilization couldn't build a castle? What if you couldn't unlock siege engineers? Would that be a death sentence? Not for the Goths. For them, it's a challenge, a provocation, a reason to swarm faster and hit harder. In Age of Empires too, most civilizations rely on a castle to unleash their true potential. Unique units, tech upgrades, defense, power projection, but not the Goths. They don't build castles. They build barracks, and lots of them. The Goths are one of the only civilizations in the game that can thrive without a single castle. Their strength doesn't lie in stone walls or expensive upgrades. It lies in their sheer volume, their ability to flood the map with infantry like an unstoppable tide. Let's say you're in Castle Age. Most civs rush to drop a castle to unlock their prized units, Chuko-Nus, war elephants, or conquistadors. But the Goths? All they need is a couple of barracks and some blacksmith upgrades. That's it. Every new age gives them cheaper infantry, 35% cheaper by Imperial. Combine that with no need for castles or siege engineers, and they're ready to spam Huskarl and halberdier armies before you can say onager. This isn't a bug, it's a philosophy. The Goths don't win through complexity. They win by making the battlefield simple. Just you and a wall of swords coming at you. It's one of the dirtiest plays in competitive AoE 2, the early infantry rush. Goth players skip the traditional economic boom and hit fast. A swarm of militia or men-at-arms in feudal, followed by floods of longswords and pikemen in castle. With each age, their infantry becomes cheaper, stronger, more disposable. It's not about trading favorably. It's about overwhelming, about war of attrition. And once they reach Imperial, they become a nightmare. Huskarls spam from multiple barracks can wipe out archer civs in minutes. No castles needed, just blacksmiths, barracks, and sheer will. Most civs dread not having siege engineers. No upgrades means weaker rams, slower trebuchets, and less map control. But the Goths sidestep this problem entirely. Instead of siege, they become the siege. Huskarl units tank arrow fire and tear down buildings. Halberdiers eat cavalry. The army floods so fast that even elite walls crumble under pressure. In team games, they act as the perfect meat shield, taking damage while allies snipe or raid. In one-on-ones, they starve your resources and overwhelm your production. No siege engineers? So what? Why throw boulders when you can throw thousands of bodies? The endgame in Age of Empires 2 often comes down to what's called a trash war, fighting with units that cost no gold. Halberdiers, skirmishers, scouts. The Goths were made for this. With their discount infantry and no gold Huskarl spam, thanks to anarchy and perfusion, they dominate trash wars. In fact, the only civs that can stand toe-to-toe with them in this phase are ones like Vietnamese, strong skirmishers and HP bonus. Malians, resilient infantry with pierce armor. Slavs, faster farming, great support units. But even then, Goths hold a unique advantage. Production speed. Perfusion turns their barracks into rapid-fire infantry factories. And in a drawn-out war of attrition, speed kills. Or more accurately, speed drowns. You won't be outplayed, you'll be outswarmed. If you zoom out from the gameplay, the Goths' tech tree tells a story. A story not of dominance through technology, but of overwhelming force through numbers. Historically, the Goths didn't siege cities with catapults or towers. They laid waste to Rome with waves of warriors. They exploited weakness. They struck when supply lines failed and morale broke. They were the embodiment of, we don't play by your rules. No castles? They didn't build them. No siege? They were the siege. No gold? They found a way anyway. Their strength was never in what they had, it was in what they lacked. They had nothing to lose, and that made them terrifying. Playing Goths is a psychological game. You tell your opponent, I'm not going to fight fair, I'm not going to turtle, I'm going to bleed you dry. They force you to respond to them. They flip the script. If you're not ready, they'll hit you with 60 Huskarls before you even finish your first trebuchet. So don't underestimate the power of not having a castle. Don't mourn the missing siege engineers. In the hands of the right player, the Goths are proof that walls, siege, and gold are luxuries. All you really need is enough bodies to storm the gates. Chapter 5. Gothic Psychology. Why they intimidate. In the vast battlefield of Age of Empires 2, few civilizations evoke such an immediate psychological reaction as the Goths. They're not the fastest, nor the most technologically advanced. They don't build castles or unleash terrifying siege engines. And yet, when the enemy drops a barracks-heavy base and the minimap begins to flood with red dots, even the calmest player feels their pulse quicken. Why? To understand why the Goths inspire fear, we must begin not with statistics or unit counters, but with emotion. The most terrifying Gothic onslaught doesn't begin in the late game. It begins in the player's mind. Once the enemy sees that you're Goths, a ticking clock begins. They know it's only a matter of time before the map is overrun with Huskarls. It's not just about numbers, it's about inevitability. Watching waves of infantry pour out of barracks is a visceral experience. There is no elegance, no subtlety. It's raw, brute momentum. Unlike archer civs, which pick at the edges, or cavalry civs, which rely on positioning, the Goth strategy feels like a human tide. And psychologically, being overrun triggers a primal stress response. The map gets noisy. Commands start overlapping. Control breaks down. In a typical game, players rely on controlling space and tempo. Against the Goths, that control slowly erodes. First, the flanks collapse. Then the gold mines are denied. By the time your walls fall and Huskarls are eating villagers inside your base, it doesn't matter if you have better tech, you're drowning. This fear is amplified by how Huskarls behave. Their high pierce armor renders archers almost useless. Their low cost means you can't trade efficiently. And their production speed, especially with perfusion, overwhelms even well-fortified defenses. No time to think, only time to react. This swarm psychology has parallels in other games. In StarCraft, the Zerg faction thrives on overwhelming numbers, breeding fear through quantity over quality. In the early game, Mongols in Age of Empires 2 can exert similar pressure with fast scouts and micro. But what makes Goths unique is their late-game snowball. It flips the typical balance curve. Instead of fading in relevance, they become more terrifying as the game drags on. Against Mongols, you're afraid of precision raids. Against Zerg, it's early game rushes. But Goths represent doom at the end of the tunnel. They weaponize time itself. Every minute you let them live is a mistake. That ticking clock becomes a mental noose. There is also lore and image. The Huskarls aren't just units. They represent a cultural memory of elite shock troops who defy logic. They're silent, relentless, and appear out of nowhere. In-game, they act similarly. They ignore towers, they eat arrow fire, and they come in hordes. A player watching their castle fall to a wave of black-clad Huskarls often remembers it longer than any trebuchet war. There's a reason so many memes exist about Goth spam. It scars people. It becomes a story. I thought I had it in the bag, and then the flood came. Ultimately, the intimidation factor of the Goths is less about game mechanics and more about what they do to the player's psyche. They take away control. They remove the illusion of safety. They show you that even without the best tools, sheer willpower and infinite barracks can win wars, and that's terrifying. Chapter 6. The real Goths, East versus West. They sacked Rome, toppled emperors, and vanished into the pages of history. But in Age of Empires 2, the Goths return not as fragmented tribes, but as a unified, terrifying swarm. So, who were the real Goths? And more importantly, which side, East or West, does your in-game civilization truly descend from? When the world fell apart, in 410 AD, Rome, the Eternal City, fell to an army of so-called barbarians. Leading them was Alaric I, king of the Visigoths. His troops didn't burn the city to the ground. They didn't need to. The psychological impact was enough. Rome was no longer untouchable. But the story of the Goths began long before this moment. Originally, the Goths were a Germanic people who migrated south from modern-day Scandinavia and Poland around the 2nd century AD. By the 3rd century, they had split into two main branches: the Visigoths, Western Goths; the Ostrogoths, Eastern Goths. This division would define not just Gothic history, but the fate of entire empires. Let's start with the Visigoths. After their infamous sack of Rome, the Visigoths wandered westward and eventually settled in Hispania, modern-day Spain and Portugal. Here, they established a kingdom that would last until 711 AD, when it fell to the Muslim Umayyad Caliphate during the rapid Islamic expansion. But during those 3 centuries, the Visigoths laid the groundwork for what would later become medieval Christian Spain. They merged Roman administrative systems with Germanic tribal laws. They converted from Arian Christianity to Catholicism. They even created early codes of law that influenced later European legal systems. In Age of Empires terms, the Visigoths are builders. They're the kind of civ that expands steadily, controls territory, and holds power long-term. But in the game, the Goths are nothing like that. So maybe we've been looking at the wrong Goths all along. Unlike their Western cousins, The Ostrogoths were shaped by the East. They spent decades as subjects of the Huns, only breaking free after Attila's death. In the power vacuum that followed, the Eastern Roman, Byzantine Empire sent a brilliant Gothic general named Theodoric the Great to reclaim Italy. He did more than that. In 493 AD, Theodoric defeated the barbarian king Odoacer and established a new kingdom in Italy, ruling from Ravenna. He preserved much of Roman culture and administration, but Gothic warriors remained the power behind the throne. The Ostrogoths were elite horsemen, disciplined fighters, and experts at navigating both warfare and politics. So if Age of Empires II gives us a Gothic civ based around military flooding and infantry spam, are they really Ostrogoths? Well, not exactly. The game's Goths, a fictional synthesis. In reality, the Goths in Age of Empires II are a fantasy fusion, not tied to either Visigoths or Ostrogoths specifically. Historically, neither branch fielded massive infantry-only armies. They relied on a mix of cavalry, archers, and Roman-style tactics, especially after settling in former imperial lands. But in the game, the Goths are defined by barracks units only. No access to castles, siege engineers, or strong economy techs. Bonus production of infantry, especially the anti-archer Huskarl. This all points to a gameplay design philosophy. The devs weren't recreating history. They were building a feeling, a sense of being overwhelmed by an unstoppable tide of soldiers. That emotion, it comes not from Gothic history, but from Gothic legend. In the minds of Roman citizens, the Goths represented the chaos of the post-imperial world. They didn't just sack cities, they toppled a world order. That's the feeling Age of Empires II captures with its Gothic civilization, not an accurate simulation of Visigothic Spain or Ostrogothic Italy, but the cultural trauma of Rome being swallowed by the frontier. Every time a player faces a Gothic flood, they aren't just losing a match, they're reliving a collapse. So, which Goths are we playing, if we had to pick? The Visigoths had a longer legacy in the West, but were more stable and institutional. The Ostrogoths were more militarized, born in chaos, and wielded sharp, decisive power. Age of Empires II's Goths are closer to the Ostrogoths in spirit, especially Theodoric's early campaigns and the raw might of Gothic warriors carving out new empires. But truly, they're a mythic echo of the Gothic name. A scythe born from fear, remembered for fire, and reinvented for gameplay. In real life, the Goths never built an empire to rival Rome. They carved kingdoms from its corpse, but couldn't sustain them for long. In Age of Empires II, the Goths are what might have been. A civilization of pure aggression, held together not by diplomacy or architecture, but by unrelenting violence. In the end, the Goths weren't remembered for what they built. They were remembered for what they destroyed. Chapter 7. From Rome to Ravenna. The last Gothic kingdoms. They once toppled an empire, but they couldn't build one of their own. This is the story of the last Gothic kingdoms, glorious in ambition, tragic in fate. It all started with a promise, one last chance to carve out a lasting Gothic empire after the fall of Rome. After centuries of wandering and warring, the Ostrogoths had finally seized control of Italy. In the late 5th century, under their brilliant king Theodoric the Great, they took Rome, ruled Ravenna, and dreamed of a Gothic golden age. For a brief moment, it almost worked. Theodoric managed to balance two worlds, Roman law and Gothic strength. He didn't try to erase Roman identity. Instead, he fused it with Gothic leadership. It was revolutionary. But what Theodoric built with vision time would soon unravel through blood. The Byzantine hammer falls. In the 530s, the Eastern Roman Empire, centered in Constantinople, was rising again. The Emperor Justinian had a grand mission: to reunite the Roman world. And to do that, the Goths had to go. So he sent his deadliest weapon, General Belisarius. A military genius who had already crushed the Vandals in North Africa, Belisarius landed in Sicily and moved up the Italian peninsula like a ghost, reclaiming city after city. The Ostrogoths resisted, but the cracks were showing. Without Theodoric, who died in 526, the kingdom had fractured. Factionalism, civil war, and weak leadership allowed the Byzantines to slice through what was left of Gothic unity. The siege of Rome in 537 to 538 became a brutal symbol of this collapse. The Ostrogoths, now desperate, tried to starve Belisarius out, but the Romans inside chose famine over surrender. They remembered what Gothic rule had meant before. Eventually, Ravenna, the Gothic capital, fell. The last Ostrogothic king, Totila, was defeated and killed in battle. And with that, the dream of a Gothic kingdom in Italy was dead. In Age of Empires 2, the Goths are terrifying, until they aren't. Their strength is momentum. Once their infantry machine starts rolling, it feels unstoppable. Barracks spam, Huskarls pouring out, villagers being slaughtered, it's a nightmare. But if the enemy survives the early flood, the Gothic wave loses its sting. No castles, no siege engineers, no elite units beyond infantry. Once stopped, Goths can't pivot, and that mirrors history. The Goths of old were brilliant at chaos, raiding, sacking, overwhelming weaker foes. But when faced with a patient, organized enemy like Belisarius and the Byzantines, they couldn't adapt. They had no diplomatic strategy, no sustainable system, no long-term plan. Like their gameplay, they were all in on one explosive push. When that failed, so did their kingdom. If the Byzantines broke the Ostrogoths in the east, the Franks did the same to the Visigoths in the west. After the Visigoths settled in Hispania, modern Spain, they built a kingdom that lasted nearly 200 years. But it was always fragile. Religious divisions between Arian Goths and Catholic locals created constant tension. By the 8th century, the kingdom had fractured into warring nobles. Then came the Franks. Under Charles Martel and later Charlemagne, the Franks expanded rapidly. They conquered Lombardy in northern Italy, then turned toward the Gothic remnants in the Pyrenees. The last Gothic strongholds fell, one by one, until nothing remained. Gothic blood was absorbed into the Frankish Empire. Their identity faded. Their legacy dissolved. Here's the question: why could the Goths bring down the Roman Empire but never replace it with their own? The answer lies in structure. Rome built roads, laws, bureaucracy. It trained administrators, engineers, and governors. The Goths built war bands. They moved fast, struck hard, and ruled by fear and tradition. They could conquer cities, but couldn't govern them. Even Theodoric, the most visionary of Gothic kings, relied on Roman advisors to manage his kingdom. When the Romans disappeared, the machine broke down. The Goths didn't have the tools or time to replace it. By the end of the 8th century, the name Goth was history. The last Gothic kings had fallen. Their people intermarried, their language vanished, and their culture was swallowed by emerging European powers. The name survived only in architecture, Gothic cathedrals, and myth. And yet, their spirit lives on, in our screens, our games, and our stories. In Age of Empires 2, the Goths are immortalized not for what they built, but for how they fought. They're a civilization that thrives in the storm, not the aftermath. In the game, just like in history, the Goths teach one lesson: dominate early, or vanish forever. Chapter 8. Trash Wars and Post-Imperial Chaos. Imagine the world after the fall of an empire. Roads broken, borders erased, and law replaced by brute strength. No more legions, no more emperors, just chaos. In this shattered Europe, the Goths were no longer conquerors, but symbols of an age that had truly collapsed. When the Western Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, Europe didn't gracefully transition into medieval kingdoms. It fell apart. Cities were abandoned, trade routes vanished, and warlords took the place of senators. This post-imperial landscape became a savage arena of survival, something Age of Empires 2 captures surprisingly well through a mechanic players often overlook: the trash war. In gameplay terms, a trash war refers to battles where players rely on non-gold units, Huskarls, halberdiers, and skirmishers, because gold, like imperial authority, has run out. The Goths thrive in this scenario. They don't need fancy tech or gold to be deadly. With cheap, fast spamming infantry, they become the perfect faction for a world where resources are scarce and brutality decides who rules. This isn't just a gameplay quirk. It's a mirror of what Gothic warfare actually became. Not elegant or organized, but relentless, desperate, and devastating. Historically, the Goths didn't invent the idea of barbarian chaos, but they embodied it. After the fall of Rome, Gothic bands moved into Italy, Gaul, and Hispania, not as conquerors with a grand strategy, but as opportunists carving out whatever land they could hold. In doing so, they became the face of a Europe lost in transition. Their kingdoms, especially the Visigoths in Hispania, were patchwork states, always one battle away from collapse. They lacked the administrative rigor of Rome, and instead of order, they spread fear. Not because they were cruel, but because they represented the unknown. In Age of Empires 2, the late-game Goth player does the same. They throw waves of Huskarls and halberdiers at you, not with the precision of Franks or the speed of Mongols, but with sheer numbers and relentless pressure. You might be winning the game economically until you're buried in bodies. It's not just a strategy, it's psychological warfare, just like the real Gothic raids of the 6th and 7th centuries. Let's talk about trash units, skirmishers, halberdiers, and hussars. These are units you can create with only food and wood. No gold required. For many civilizations, these units are backup, used in emergencies. For the Goths, they are the main weapon. Why does this matter? Because it reflects a deeper historical truth. After Rome, gold became scarce. The great coinage systems broke down. Mercenary generals had to rely on what they could raise: peasant armies, conscripted militias, armed mobs. The Gothic armies were often exactly that. Masses of desperate men armed with whatever they could find. Huskarls in the game wear chainmail and carry axes, but historically, even elite Gothic warriors had to adapt with minimal resources. Age of Empires 2 captures this moment of collapse beautifully. When a game drags into the post-Imperial Age, late Imperial Age in-game, you begin to feel that exhaustion. The trade routes dry up. Gold becomes a treasure to kill for. Suddenly, trash units aren't optional. They're your only choice. And that's when the Goths shine. Not in gold-rich prosperity, but in the chaotic, decaying twilight. The fall of Rome didn't immediately lead to the rise of new kingdoms. It led to centuries of war. Not grand battles between empires, but countless skirmishes between tribes, clans, and warlords. no one was safe. The Goths were part of this ongoing disaster. And like other barbarians of the era, the Vandals, Lombards, and Franks, they fought not for ideology, but for survival. In AoE 2, this is reflected in how late-game trash wars are fought. They're not elegant, they're not glorious, they're brutal slugfests. You're not building wonders or marvels, you're building barracks, dozens of them, because you know the enemy is going to throw everything at you. The Gothic strategy in late game becomes a game of attrition. It's a statement. You can kill my army, but I'll build it again before you take your next breath. This philosophy matches the post-Roman Gothic mindset. Not to build empires, but to outlast everyone else. Most civilizations in Age of Empires 2 peak early or mid-game. Knights for the Franks, crossbows for the Britons, Mangudai for the Mongols. But the Goths? They're made for the endgame. Not when the world is stable, but when it's crumbling. When castles have fallen, gold is gone, and hope is running dry. That's when the Goths are strongest. Just like in history. They were never the architects of a new golden age. They were the inheritors of a broken one. In their world, power came from outlasting your enemies, not outbuilding them. What makes the Goths fascinating isn't just their units, it's what they represent. In gameplay and history, they symbolize the dark side of collapse. They force you to ask, what happens when empire falls? What rises from its ashes? And when gold runs dry, who's left standing? In both Age of Empires and real history, the answer often comes back to the same brutal truth. The ones who can keep fighting, even when the world ends. And that's the Gothic legacy. The term barbarian has long been used to vilify groups like the Goths. But if you step back and look closer, the Goths weren't monsters. They were survivors of a world that had collapsed around them. In Age of Empires 2, the trash war isn't glamorous, but it's honest. It forces you to fight like a Gothic war band, desperate, relentless, and unwilling to quit. And in a game and a world where only the strongest endure, the Goths remind us of one unshakable truth. Even in ruins, there's power. Chapter 9. Countering the Horde. The swarm is coming. Are you ready? That's the question every player dreads when facing a late-game Goth army in Age of Empires 2. A black tide of Huskarl and halberdier crashes through your walls, shrugging off arrows and tearing your villagers to shreds. But just like in history, overwhelming force has its counter. The key is understanding the rhythm of the horde and hitting where it hurts. The Gothic threat. Strength in numbers. By the time the Imperial Age rolls around, a well-prepared Goth player becomes a terrifying war machine. No other civilization can churn out infantry as quickly and cheaply. With reduced barracks cost and faster training speed, their military snowballs into what players call the trash flood, a wave of expendable units like halberdiers and Huskarls that never seems to end. But the real horror? Huskarls. These unique units are bred for destruction, fast, tanky, and with absurd resistance to archer fire. In large numbers, they can nullify one of the most common and effective military counters, ranged units. Throw in some halberdiers to take care of cavalry and siege rams to absorb tower fire. And suddenly you have a front line that's both cheap and deadly. And it's all about momentum. If the Goth player hits you before you're fully set up, before your defenses are in place or your economy booms, it might already be too late. The Horde wins not by elegance, but by pressure. How to survive. Tactics for the brave. So how do you stop this flood? How do you deal with a faction designed to grind you down by sheer attrition? Let's break it down into 3 survival phases. You can't fight what you can't stop. The most critical mistake against Goths is underestimating their timing. Their infantry arrives sooner than you expect. That's why the first line of defense is always strong walls. Palisade walls won't cut it. Stone walls, with a second layer if possible, are essential. But walls are only half the battle. Towers, castles, and choke points turn your base into a death trap. If you're playing as a civilization with access to strong defensive structures, like Byzantines, Teutons, or Koreans, you can use terrain to your advantage. The idea is simple. Delay the flood. Every second you buy behind walls gives your economy time to scale, your upgrades time to finish, and your tech units time to assemble. The Gothic army relies heavily on melee infantry. Their biggest weakness? Archer-heavy compositions and siege destruction. Once you survive the initial wave, it's time to hit back with precision. Arbalests. If you're fast and smart, archers can shred even elite Huskarls. Yes, Huskarls have ranged armor, but with massed fire and good micro, they melt. Hand cannoneers. Perfect against infantry. Their high attack stat can chew through Goths, even if they cost gold. Onagers and siege. Onagers. One well-placed shot can wipe out an entire squad of halberdiers or Huskarls. Control your shots well, and the horde dies faster than it arrived. Bombard cannons. They can destroy Goth siege and help reclaim map control. Especially useful if you're behind in military but ahead in tech. The secret here is not just what you build, but how you time it. If you invest too late, you drown. If you invest too early, your economy suffers. Here's the thing about the Gothic economy. It's strong in military production, not sustainability. Gold eventually runs out. Relic control, trade routes, and map presence become key. If you can hold out until the late Imperial Age, and you control the relics or trade lines, the Goths begin to weaken. Without gold, they rely on trash units. Still dangerous, but manageable if you have elite units and map control. Some key late-game strategies. Relic denial. Hunt down their monks. Deny them gold flow. Trade raiding. Goths don't usually invest heavily in trade. Punish them if they do. Castle spam, especially with civilizations like Spanish, Teutons, or Britons. They slow down the flood and create safe zones. Convert the flood. If you have access to monks and technologies like theocracy or redemption, you can flip the tide. Literally, it's no coincidence that gameplay counters for the Goths mirror what the Romans themselves did. Fortification. The Romans built border walls like Hadrian's Wall in Britain to slow barbarian incursions. Siege warfare. When faced with Germanic tribes, Roman legions employed siege engines to devastate enemy strongholds without direct melee confrontation. Discipline and formation. Rather than match the Goths in raw aggression, Roman forces emphasized tight formations, superior logistics, and tactical retreats, fighting smart, not hard. Even the final defeats of the Gothic kingdoms, against Belisarius in Italy and the Franks in Hispania, came from strategic encirclement and attrition, not brute force. In short, history teaches us that overwhelming hordes can be broken, not by matching them in numbers, but in brains. The Goths, both in history and in game, represent a test of preparation. They're the ultimate attrition civilization, cheap, fast, brutal. But that comes at a cost. Vulnerability to strategy, to positioning, to clever counterplay. To fight the horde is to embrace the grind. Every wall you build, every relic you secure, every mangonel you line up, it's not just about defense. It's about telling the story of civilization. that chaos and destruction can be held back by order, intelligence, and will. The question is not if you can stop the Goths. It's whether you're ready for the moment they come knocking. Chapter 10. The Horde in Multiplayer. Legends and memes. Goths spam equals no skill, but also legendary. There are few things more terrifying and more hilarious in the world of Age of Empires 2 than seeing a wave of hundreds of Huskarl infantry flooding across the map. You thought you were safe behind layers of stone walls? Think again. The Goths have reached critical mass. The Horde is here. But this wasn't always seen as a badge of honor. In the early days of multiplayer, especially in ranked lobbies, Goths were often the most hated civ-y. Noob civ. All-in trash spam. Just hold spacebar. The memes came fast and stayed. But over time, something changed. What began as a symbol of low-effort play slowly transformed into an inside joke, then a community meme, and finally, a nostalgic icon. In a game full of intricate micro and booming eco builds, the Goths offer something primal, pure, blunt. You don't win with style, you win with numbers. When population caps were hit, it wasn't rare to see 130-plus Huskarls on the field, diving into castles, ignoring arrow fire, overrunning elite archers like ants on sugar. And if you paired them with halberdier, you could destroy paladins for a fraction of the cost. It was ugly, inefficient, beautiful. In late-game Imperial Wars, where gold runs dry and trash units take over, Goths don't just survive, they thrive. Their barracks churn out units at inhuman speeds, making them the ultimate trash chiv. And so, a legend was born. Some of the most legendary moments in Age of Empires 2 multiplayer history came from Goths. The 200-pop flood that broke an enemy team's wonder defense. The last-minute Huskarl dive through a breach that ended a 2-hour game. Even casual FFA lobbies where Goths turned every map into a battlefield of corpses and fire. One infamous quote summed it up best. Goths don't need strategy. Goths are the strategy. Suddenly, the hate began to evolve. It was hard not to smile at a perfectly timed Goth spam that collapsed a booming Portuguese player or shredded a Teutonic turtle. Annoying? Yes. Memorable? Always. And then came the streamers. T90 Official, Hera, Viper, MemTV. At some point, they all encountered the madness that was a full-pop Goth flood. Whether it was a viewer game or a pro ladder match gone off the rails, Goths provided pure content gold. The chat would explode. Goths incoming. Run, boy. Spacebar Civ. Noob Strat FTW. It became meme canon. Goths equals low skill. Goths are fun chaos. Goths equals anti-meta surprise. The answer was yes, to all of it. Goths represented the wild card of multiplayer. You never quite respected them, until it was too late. And by then, your base was ash. While newer civilizations boast fancy techs and unique combos, Goths remained the same. Brutal, simple, relentless. They don't have cavalry. They don't have strong economy. They don't have late-game gold units. But what they have is pressure. And in multiplayer, pressure is king. Especially in low elo team games, where walls are weak and teamwork weaker, a Goth player with enough time and barracks can tear apart entire teams. They become the Flood, unstoppable once the gates fall. Even in deathmatch mode, Goths still have a loyal fan base. Who else can produce 10 units per second from fully upgraded barracks? The Horde lives on. Oddly enough, playing Goths teaches valuable lessons. Map control matters. You need space to build 10+ barracks. Timings are critical. Wait too long and archers will erase you. Unit counters matter. Without siege, you're stuck. Without walls, you die. And perhaps most importantly, sometimes brute force is the answer. Goths are not elegant, they're not beautiful. But in the chaos of multiplayer, they teach the art of overwhelming force and the thrill of watching dozens of units spawn and charge toward victory. They're the underdog, the meme, the legend. They break rules, spam units, and represent pure, unapologetic fun. You don't play Goths to impress anyone. You play Goths to laugh at the chaos you unleash, and sometimes, just sometimes, to win when nobody thought you could. In a world of tryhards and meta strategies, Goths remind us why we play Age of Empires 2 in the first place. To have fun, to flood the map, to become the Horde. And as long as there are lobbies open and noobs discovering the joy of barracks spam, the Goths will never die. Chapter 11. Final Reflections. The Legacy of the Gothic Horde in History and Gameplay. They came in waves, merciless, unrelenting, unstoppable. And even after their empires crumbled, their legacy refused to die. From the blood-soaked fields outside Rome, to the chaotic rush of Imperial Age multiplayer matches, the Goths have remained one of the most misunderstood and iconic forces in both history and Age of Empires 2. But beyond the spammed infantry and broken dreams lies a deeper story of a people forever caught between annihilation and adaptation, a legacy forged in fire. Historically, the Goths were not born to rule. They were born to survive. Pushed westward by the advance of the Huns, they crossed into Roman territory not as conquerors, but as refugees. Yet what followed was one of the most violent and transformative episodes in European history. They burned cities, toppled emperors, shook the foundations of a 1,000-year-old empire. And then, they disappeared, not into nothing, but into everything. They became Visigoths in Spain, Ostrogoths in Italy, and ultimately just Europeans. Their language vanished, their kings faded, but their shockwave rippled across centuries. In Age of Empires 2, this fleeting but violent momentum is recreated with precision. The Goths don't build empires, they destroy them. You don't play Goths to last. You play Goths to kill before you're killed. It's a civ designed not for glory, but for glorious ruin. Gameplay as philosophy. Let's take a step back. What does it mean to play as the Goths? You don't get walls. You don't get good archers. You don't get fancy tech. You're a horde, not a nation. You get cheaper infantry, faster production, and a blacksmith of brutality. You're not supposed to win cleanly. You're supposed to overwhelm, to exhaust, to make your enemy bleed out in wave after wave of cannon fodder infantry until even their most elite armies crumble under the weight of sheer numbers. And if that sounds grim, it's because it is. The Goths in AoE 2 are a poetic metaphor for real historical chaos, the kind that doesn't build civilizations, but brings them down. And sometimes, that's just as important. From noobs to legends. But the Goths aren't just a history lesson, they're a meme. In the AoE 2 community, the Gothic Horde has become a rite of passage. Everyone remembers the first time they spammed Huskarls into a TC, or got shredded by elite skirmishers and cried. They've been called noob civs, low skill, even brain dead. But here's the twist. Under the right hands, the Goths are devastating. Pros like the Viper or Hera have shown just how surgical the Horde can be. It's not just about numbers, it's about timing, economy, aggression, and understanding the momentum window. You miss it? You're dead. You hit it? You're legend. And that's the magic. The Goths aren't just an infantry civy, they're a narrative. Every match with them feels like a countdown, a race against walls, archers, castles, and time itself. You don't play Goths to win pretty, you play Goths to win loud. The real horde never dies, even outside of Age of Empires. The Gothic spirit lives on. In medieval memory, in European folklore, and yes, even in modern media. Think of every fantasy army that floods the battlefield with axe-wielding warriors, every undead swarm, every barbarian tide. That's not just imagination. That's the Gothic legacy. It's the fear of the outsider, the rage of the displaced, the violence of history refusing to be neat and civilized. The Goths weren't just destroyers of Rome. They were a mirror to its decay. They exposed its weakness, its pride, its fragility. And in the game, they do the same. No matter how well you boom, no matter how many walls you build, if you underestimate the horde, you will fall. Why they matter, so why do the Goths still matter? Because they remind us of a side of history we often want to forget. Not every civilization is meant to last. Not every army fights for glory. Sometimes survival itself is the only goal. And sometimes the loudest impact comes from those who disappear fastest. In Age of Empires 2, the Goths force us to confront chaos, to think faster, to defend smarter, to endure longer. And for those few minutes when your screen floods with barracks and infantry, you're not just playing a strategy game. You're reenacting the slow-motion collapse of the ancient world. That's not just design. That's art. Final words. If there's one thing to take away from this journey through Gothic history and gameplay, it's this. The horde never really goes away. It just waits. In the shadows, in the corners of maps, in the ruins of empires, and the lobbies of multiplayer matches, you'll hear it. The stomp of boots, the chant of war, the scream of infantry dying by the dozen and still coming. So next time you queue up a game and see the word Goths across from your name, don't laugh, don't relax. Prepare. Because history doesn't always favor the strong. Sometimes it favors the relentless.